Okay, this thing is really starting to look pretty convincing. We're pretty much done with the exterior. Obviously, if we wanted to make this, we would need to make all the interior ribs and everything as well. But for the images, we are pretty close, except when I look at the shape of this body, it is not the same as my original sketch, right? I think the original sketch had so much grace about these lines. I mean, I think that the curves here are really nice. They're what I intended for this to look like, whereas the curves of this final thing are much more kind of clunky and angular. And I'm not happy with how they came out. So what we need to do is actually just kind of revisit that, and that is the beauty of parametric modeling. We can actually go back and make those changes, and everybody's going to update based on the changes that we make. So we're going to look at that original sketch that we created, and I'm going to click on my sketch picture icon in the toolbar that I added. It's a custom button that I added, and bring in that original sketch picture and bring it over here, and it's going to be too big, so let's just scale it down a bit until we think it looks like it's about the right height. I'm just going to be basing this on the height. Make sure that from end to end looks about right. Looks good. And then we'll make sure that we have full image transparency. Turn that way on up and click OK. And now we can start to adjust our spline. But our spline is locked down, right? It's got so many constraints on it. Let's just delete all of these constraints. I know that we went to a lot of trouble to create them earlier, and they might be useful sometimes. But in our case, for this model, I think that they're actually just serving to get in the way, really. So rather than work with those constraints, I'm going to say we just take this guy and we're just going to make it match the picture. That's what I think. This thing has something. Oh, there we go. That's what it is. So I'm just getting rid of constraints and moving these control vertices to get this curve to match what I actually want it to look like. Forget about dimensions for a little while. Let's just make it look the way that we want. And now as I'm working, if I want to, I can always right-click this and show my curvature combs. And I could crank up the size of those a little bit. Probably turn down the density a little bit because it's a little bit high. And click OK. That'll make it a little bit easier to see the quality of our curve if we want, as we work our way around this. And as you can see, the quality of this curve is not fantastic, but that is the nature of SOLIDWORKS splines, I'm afraid. They don't give us much option. We're kind of stuck with them. Now, we can improve them. If we click on the spline here, for example, we get it pretty close to the way we want it. Click the spline. Sometimes if you click on Relax Spline over here, then that will improve your curve quite a bit. Obviously, in this case, it did not. All right, so we could also click on Reset All Handles, and that's going to kind of at least let this thing flow a little bit better, and you can see that the quality of the curve, if you look at the curvature comb, is a lot nicer. So we could come through here then and just drag these control vertices around to try to get back to where we want to be. But this is the nature of working with these parametric splines in SOLIDWORKS, and this is one of the main reasons why, if you're doing a lot of serious cosmetic sculpting and you really care about the surface quality and the quality of curvature on your splines, you're probably going to want to use a different tool, frankly. SOLIDWORKS is pretty limited in that regard. Hate to admit it, guys, but that's true. All right. So that is starting to look a lot more like my original design intent, right? I think this is pretty darn good. I'm going to turn off my curvature combs again, and then we can exit this sketch. And when we do, you can see that the entire body has updated the way that it should. Looks like there are no errors in the master model. Good stuff. Close this up. Yes. And now we just have to update our assembly by clicking the little green, rebuild button at the top, green light. Go ahead, rebuild everything based on the changes we made to that master model. It's going to look through, it's going to find all the parts that are affected by those changes and rebuild them. And there we go. Radically changed shape. Did you see that? Man, I wish I could flip back and forth and do a before and after. You can see just how much nicer this shape is, and we were able to change that on the fly. That is the power of parametric modeling, people. All right, let's move on.